Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Faith and Culture to Your Health segment. We didn't meet last month. It was Labor Day, so we should have all been just relaxing and enjoying that we live in the United States of America and that we have jobs. But today is October 6th. It's 2025, and someone that I truly admire has agreed to join us again, and this is Dr. Sheila Furey. I think I should have changed that entrance video to something with brains and synapses going off, and also just kind of being prepared to know what's going on in our world today. We have so much. I don't think we're even going to have time to cover it all in an hour. So Dr. Furey is going to talk to us today about all sorts of things going on in the health industry, the WHO, why there's such a threat. The last time she was on, she started to explain that. I think that was back in July, I believe. Anyhow, and then we have the issues of vaccines and medications and big pharma and gender ideology, confusion. Dr. Furey is a psychiatrist, if you all do not remember from before, if you have not seen this segment before. So I'm going to let her introduce herself as a little bit, because some of us we know what she does and what a value she is to our world today. So welcome, Dr. Furey.
Welcome, and thank you for having me on. It's a delight to be back with you and with all of your audience. As you said, I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I've been in practice for approximately 30 years. And the other hat I wear is that I'm the president of the Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance, which is a group of healthcare professionals and concerned citizens who are pushing back against the mainstream medical establishment in order to provide really truly health care that gets you off dependence on pharmacological agents, if possible, and also to give you true informed consent so that you understand what is happening with your body and what options you have in order to achieve health.
And that's a big deal, because as we know, many people started to wake up to the nefarious nature of our medical systems about 5 years ago. Some of us started waking up from, what's going on a little bit sooner than, or earlier than that. I did, I know, with my family issues. But it takes someone like you with the tenacity, with the knowledge, your background, your educational background, and your networking to bring something like the Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance alive and to really get some momentum going. And I think finally, I know it's been blood, sweat, and tears. And I think it's finally gaining some momentum. So thank you, really.
I am grateful for the momentum, and I think it's really happening at a grassroots level where each family is waking up. And every time that we have a family call us and say, we're making decisions, we want to learn more about vaccine options that we have and religious exemptions, medical exemptions, that they're really taking seriously the information that we provide for them and what is going to happen to their child if they inject something into them that they don't want there. And what are the long-term consequences of that? And so that's really the power of being able to network across the state and across the country, is that you get to meet real people in real time and sit with them and spend time with them and provide them with education that is not only going to make a difference now, but in the future.
Yeah, and in the future is right. We have an epidemic, I don't have to tell you, of all of these autoimmune diseases. Anything from eczema to, brain fog, not the ADHD problem. I remember that was on the rise, started about 20, 30 years ago. Parents started to notice that their children couldn't focus in class. And of course, they were given a prescription to fix that, to slow that child down and maybe calm their brain down. And now we're finding that a lot of these ailments, in fact, most of them, are really vaccine injuries.
They're vaccine injury and toxic exposure injuries. So we have to look at what are the toxins. So we can point to vaccines, and what we know in our lifetime is the rate of autism has gone from 1 in 50 or 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 31, and for boys it's even lower. All right, so that the amount of autism that we are facing in our society is huge, and that impact is not just on the individual families, but it's on the entire society. And how do we, number one, how do we help these children, but how do we help the entire family system, and how do we prevent this from happening? So looking at the toxicity of the vaccine schedule, when I was a child, it was 5 shots at the max, okay? And now it's over 80. And that on day 1, they want to give you a vitamin K shot and a hepatitis B shot. And I don't know any sexually active IV drug abusing infants. And so parents should absolutely have the right to postpone these shots. And many of them, for hepatitis B, it could be postponed until adulthood. Or if you're in a high risk for profession, it doesn't have to be given to a newborn. And so really having parents ask some critical questions about vaccines. One of the most disturbing things I found out recently is when you read the package insert, it says this virus, this shot contains not less than X amount of viral particles. Well, I think everyone should pause at that, not less than. Well, what's the upper limit? All right. Does this vaccine product have, if it says 3,000, does it have 10,000 viral particles or 100,000 viral particles? You should know that as a parent. So why is it that we are given the lower number, but we're not given the upper limit? Yeah. If I prescribe any drug, whether it's brand name or generic, I need to know exactly how many milligrams the patient is given. So on a brand name, it's pretty accurate. With a generic, it's plus or minus a certain percentage. So I can make clinical decisions based on what I specifically know the patient is getting. However, how can I give informed consent when I'm given a lower limit, but I'm not given an upper limit? And I think parents and everyone, so even adults who get vaccinated, you should know exactly what's in the vial that's being injected in your arm, because you can't take it out. You can't simply, wash your arm off and the vaccine comes out. That is injected permanently into your body. And this is one of the many questions that parents need to ask. And we're having an upcoming summit, and we have someone specifically talking about questions that every parent and every person should ask before they take any vaccine. So rather than simply buying the line, this is safe and effective. It's been used for years. There is no side effects, or the side effects are rare. Rare is not 1 in 31 children. That is not rare. When we say rare, I want to think of that as 1 in a million. That's not 1 in 31. And as a parent, do I want to take that risk?
Yeah, and most of us don't know. We just trust the system. And sadly, we shouldn't.
And sadly also is physicians are not educated about this. So we are educated on the vaccine schedule, and we are educated in vaccine hesitancy. And they now, include vaccine hesitancy in the textbooks, all right? Rather than saying, let's understand why parents are legitimately hesitant to give their child a vaccine. And why is it that we mandate any medical treatment in this country? If we have bodily autonomy, shouldn't we have the right to decide exactly what goes in our child's body or our body? And that no one can mandate any medical treatment for us as an individual. And this is the biggest scandal that is occurring in the United States. We are not free if we have mandates that limit our movement because of our vaccine schedule.
So, Dr. Furey, when you say this is in textbooks now, vaccine hesitancy, it's not coaching doctors as to, how to educate their patients, is it? It's more of how to deal with a parent like that.
Correct. It's making a parent unhesitant. All right. So how do you change the dynamic and so that the patient agrees to get the vaccine? And what that typically is fear mongering. Okay. Yeah. Your child will die if they don't get this. All right. That you as a parent have no control. So for instance, take hepatitis B on the day of birth. Okay. Your child has no risk factors. All right. And yet, as I was told when my first child was born, their immune system is primed for this. This is the best opportunity for them to take the vaccine. That was a complete lie. All right. And being postpartum, you're not in the greatest condition to make decisions. And so I think it's really important that every mother and every father really understand and research the vaccine schedule prior to the day of birth, because you don't want to be answering those questions when you're exhausted after delivery.
Right. And you should be enjoying your new baby, not worrying about.
I've actually had the pleasure of seeing children, newborn babies, post-delivery, who did not get any vaccines, who did not get a vitamin K shot, who did not get a hepatitis B shot. And I have never in my career seen healthier babies, more alert babies than I see when with their pictures and videos of these newborn infants. And that was really shocking to me as a physician, and remembering my own children at those stages. So there is a dramatic difference. And if parents could see the difference between what happens to a newborn that is vaccinated and how they can be sleepy, drowsy, what cognitive irritability they may have, versus a child who remains unvaccinated, the difference is pretty dramatic.
And they probably won't have rashes or eczema or anything like that either. Just natural, nice clear skin.
Correct. Yeah. And I think one of the things is, as they've looked at, and Dr. Paul Thomas did one of the most wonderful studies, and he looked at, in his own practice, children who were vaccinated versus children who were not vaccinated. And he just compared the two groups to see what difference he could see. All right. And on 20 different measures, the children who were unvaccinated were healthier in every single measure. This was something he didn't even anticipate. He thought we would see maybe one or two, maybe even 3 or 4. But on every single one of the 20 measures, the children who were unvaccinated were healthier. And that's significant.
It's tragic to me. We clearly know what's, at least I'm talking about you and me here, know what's happening in church, in church, when there's another report of another death of a little baby, or somebody young just suddenly dies.
Yes.
I'm pretty old, and I've been around a while and gone to church all my life, and never before 2021 have I heard about so many young people just dropping dead, and then babies after baby, or this one has something wrong with their brain, or this one has a cancer, right after being born. We know that there has been terrible repercussions for mothers, pregnant mothers getting an unvetted experimental gene therapy injection that was touted as a C-19 vaccine. And it's troubling to me as a Christian looking at this on the children and the next generation and the parents who have fallen for this. I don't know. What do you have to say about that? Because for me, I don't I don't know how to think about it other than just a bit of anger and, you know, how do we even make this right?
Well, I think that you're spot on in that pregnancy, first of all, has always been a very sacred time. All right. You have a living being within you. And what a great gift that women have. The opportunity to carry a child within your body for 9 months and feel that child grow and develop within you and then bring forth that life. It really is a gift from God, a sacred gift that should and has up until, recently been protected. During a pregnancy, we never gave women vaccines. We didn't want women to take any medication.
Right.
Right? It didn't matter if it was an aspirin, a Motrin, a Tylenol, whatever it was. And what have we seen recently with the information about the link between autism and Tylenol? And you have these women who are taking Tylenol on camera and saying what a wonderful thing it is. So again, it's a direct assault on the child within your body. But it speaks to our culture of death and our culture that does not value life. We know that even before 1973, the move to make abortion legal, and then in 1973, when we legalized abortion, we have legalized a culture of death.
Yeah.
And what do we have? We have mothers who are the chief killers. All right. Yeah. We have mothers. They have corrupted what motherhood has been. We are the being that brings forth life. And now we have empowered in a very negative way these mothers to have control over death. Mothers who say, I have the power to choose whether I'm going to bring forth life or I'm going to choose death. It is really an evil, destructive influence in our society. And it doesn't end just with the death of the child in the womb, because it also causes death within the heart of the woman and anyone else who's involved in the process and promotes the process. It is an attack on their soul, all right? And it also, and sadly, it is used as a weapon against children, all right? Because if you live in a family where there has been abortion, you also have mothers who will say, well, I could have aborted you.
Wow.
Now, if you're a child and you're threatened, like that's a direct threat on you. How can you ever trust your mother if part of the threat is to behave is that if you don't, the option is to kill you?
Wow. That's awful. I had no idea that I guess I am very sheltered in my own little worldly bubble of, my world, Christianity, and just the things I do and what I felt when I was having children. I can't believe that happens. That's awful.
And we have it throughout the life cycle. So we, in Virginia, we're facing a very important election because not only is abortion so-called reproductive health, there's nothing health care related about ending the life of an unborn child. All right. Mm-hmm. That's not health. When somebody dies in a procedure, that's not health care. And so we need to stop using that language and calling it exactly what it is. But we also have the end of life issue where people are saying, well, you are too much of a burden. We don't want to watch you suffer. We don't want you to suffer. Suffering is part of life, all right? But suffering is not an end in itself. And that being present to people at the end of life, again, is one of the most sacred times of life. And we need to respect that. And we don't need to be pressuring people into ending their own lives and telling them it's more convenient for us because we've got a vacation planned if you die, this week and not next week. All right. And
Wow.
when you are ill and when you are dying, you are vulnerable. And so do you want that people to have that kind of power? And when we just look at Canada and the rate of euthanasia in Canada is going up every single year. It's very alarming. And they offer it to people who are handicapped, who are depressed, who are poor. So simply for being poor, you can be offered, euthanasia because it's more convenient for the government. And people need to realize that medical ethics is now taught by the government. So when we had Obamacare, one of the things that was brought in with Obamacare was ethics taught by the government. And the government teaches something called lifeboat ethics. All right. That means there's only so many places in the boat. We get to decide who's not on the boat. Or there's only so many healthcare dollars. And we get to decide who doesn't get those dollars. All right. This is completely amoral and against the Judeo-Christian foundations of this country. And people need to be aware of that. And they need to know specifically, where does their doctor stand on these issues? And if their doctor isn't on the same platform as them, they need to look for another doctor.
I agree. Really fast. And I try to tell that to people all the time, just like I used to tell people, if you're in a church that does not believe in the inerrancy of Scripture, you need to go to another church, not just leave, but run and take your children out of there. I don't care how nice it is to sing in the choir. Get out.
Correct.
That's horrible. So are you saying that euthanasia is on the ballot in the state of Virginia?
So it's not on the ballot at this time, but
Okay.
Gazmala Hashmi, who's running for lieutenant governor, offered a bill called Medical Assistance in Dying. And if the Democrats retain control of the Senate and the House and they get the executive branch, this bill will be passed and signed into law. And that is incredibly dangerous. And people need to, it lost by one vote the last cycle. And so this is why it is so important that people be aware of what is at stake. And we saw firsthand in COVID exactly what was happening. We had people who were otherwise healthy get COVID and when on admission to the emergency room were asked to sign do not resuscitate orders. Now, this is criminal. If you walk into the hospital and you are healthy, were previously healthy, everything should be done at the hospital's capacity to save your life, because you weren't someone who was sick and dying. You were somebody who was healthy and then now has a sudden change. That can be fixed. And that's not what happened in our hospital systems during COVID-19.
Yeah. I just aired a show with Scott Shera, who lost his daughter that way. She wasn't really sick. She went in because she had a cold. They wanted to make sure it wasn't COVID because they were going to a wedding, a family wedding. And they, of course, we know the tests were flawed. The PCR tests were flawed. And because she had Down syndrome, they also have it in their codicils in the hospital, codicils or their rules, that they do not give special treatment to anyone with Down syndrome or a handicap. Like you're saying, they would prefer that they just are not around anymore, which is unthinkable. The things I've learned.
They also directly market to the mentally ill. All right. So if you are going to a community service board to get your mental health care here in Virginia, one of the things that they do is they educate the staff to talk about end of life care. And end of life care for them is, okay, so if you are sick in the hospital, and your heart stops, do you want us to restart it? All right. That depends specifically on the circumstances in which your heart might stop. All right. There are circumstances, absolutely, where you could have your heart restarted, or you could be intubated. All right. If you have an asthma attack, you may need to be intubated for a very short period of time. There are other things that are just temporary, but this would have a blanket instruction to the hospital that you are a do not resuscitate order. And that's exactly what the establishment wants.
Wow. That's terrible. So is this agenda of death coming from somewhere? Or has this just developed over time?
It is coming from the highest echelon. So in particular, the World Health Organization and the United Nations.
Wow.
And I previously talked about the move by the World Health Organization to gain control and have, if they declare a pandemic, an epidemic, a pandemic, or any risk factors, so a potential pandemic, the World Health Organization would have the ability to declare that health emergency and come in and usurp the power of the state or the region and make them under global control. So this legislation was stopped at the World Health Organization level. However, they did an end around, and we could have anticipated that. They went to the UN, they took the same principles to the United Nations, and they passed in the United Nations. Now, what people have to understand is there's no record of the vote, all right? It's a dissent vote, all right? So you can remain silent. And if there isn't enough dissent, it passes. So there's no record of who's voting on what. Now, we know that most of the countries throughout the world are given huge amounts of money by the pharmaceutical industry. And they believe, many of these globalists believe that, this is helpful to the world. Whereas the individual people in those countries, particularly in poorer countries, know the dangers firsthand of vaccines, right? But this is a globalist move. Not only do they want to control and can mandate vaccines, they also want to control movement. They want to have digital ID. They want to have digital tracking so that your movement and access to money and movement around the country within your own community could all be limited digitally. So what they can do is say, and this is what we saw in Canada during the truckers' strike, is they can turn off your access to your money, to your bank accounts, to your credit cards in a single swipe, okay? And so do you want the world, governments to be deciding where you can go and where you can't go? It's incredibly dangerous, and we need to fight against this. And we need to be really cautious about, whenever anyone uses the term, well, this is a public-private partnership. All right?
Fascism. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And this is a partnership where the government is telling private businesses what they can or cannot do and what the government wants them to do. What the government wants them to do, not what is best for the people. And so it isn't a people first. We have this problem. How can we address this problem in a manner that brings health and vitality to the people? It's how do we address this problem in which the government retains control and the business makes lots of money?
And who is the business in this case?
The business can be anything from, and primarily it can be pharmaceutical companies, but it can be medical industrial companies. It can be any number of companies. It can be transportation companies. All right. We're going to give you a bonus, but you have to only permit these people to fly.
Yeah. Well, that's what we saw happening in 2020. There was a limitation, and then finally it was brought to court, as you know, for those who aren't aware. And of course, it was unconstitutional to force people to wear a device that cut down on their oxygen called a mask, which doesn't work anyway. So we've seen a lot of that go on. Dr. Furey, does this have all of this? And it is a culture of death, and it's pushing death. Does this have anything to do with this ideology that the earth is going to be overpopulated or is currently overpopulated?
Yes. And it's a fallacy. All right. It's the biggest lie. And, you know, every time I fly across the country and I'm looking down and I see miles and miles and miles where there's no one living. Yeah. All right. Or there's one house, there's a farmhouse here. All right. We are not an overpopulated world. And when you also see the globalists, particularly Bill Gates, buy up large swaths of farmland. All right. Why is he doing that? Well, it's not to protect it. All right. It's to prevent it from being used what it was intended for. And that was feeding the people. And because there's this whole illusion of global warming and CO2. And when you look at global warming and the cycles, there are 5,000 and 1,500 year cycles which the atmosphere and the world goes through. And we are not living in a time where our carbon dioxide level is elevated. And remember, we need carbon dioxide to live. Mm-hmm. All right. So we breathe off carbon dioxide. The plants take that up. They make oxygen. All right. It's a wonderful cycle. And yet if we limit and change, and they think they have the power to change things in the same manner that they think that they can influence the weather and change the weather. And what we've seen as their influence on the weather has a direct impact and is causing disasters all over the world. Mm-hmm. And so we cannot play God. And when we choose to play God, people are harmed at every single level.
And we've seen that, a lot of that. Bill Gates is also behind, and I'm sure there are others, but he is the most prominent, behind all of the chemtrails. And we can go back and forth, contrails, chemtrails. There's a difference. Contrails evaporate. It's condensation. Chemtrails do not. They spread out. And if, like you said, flying over, what I've noticed is you can tell the difference between a real cumulus nimbus cloud, natural, and the chemtrails. It's almost like a carpet woven. Once it spreads out, these chemicals weave themselves into like this interlocking carpet, and it's flat. And then you see the normal clouds, the ones that God intended, they poke out. And so this is, Dane Wigington has found out that they're doing this intentionally for dimming purposes. Well, if you wonder why your garden's not growing as prolifically, if you're older and had a garden 30 years ago, this is why. It's because they're controlling how much sun can get through. It's almost like, go ahead, and then I'll.
On those same lines, one of the things that people think is that once it rains, that all dissipates. That's not true. Mm-mm. So it doesn't just dissipate with rainfall. And also, going back to Vietnam, is when they used this, the trails in Vietnam, and they were trying to make it rain on the enemy and not on our service members. And one of the things that happened is that one of our base camps received 9 inches of rain in 4 hours. All right. So as much control as they think they have, they don't have that control. God is in control. Mm-hmm. Further, exactly what you're saying about the dimming effect. One of the reasons for the dark ages was they were actually dark because there was a solar event that occurred, and the amount of sunlight that the earth received, particularly in Europe, was dimmed. And so what led to the starvation was actually that the crops weren't growing because the sun was blocked.
Wow. We're talking about the environment right now, and I think Dane Wigington has a wonderful organization. What's the name of it? I just drew a blank. Geoengineeringwatch.org. Mm-hmm. Anybody, if you've never heard of him, please go out there and look him up. He started out as one of these environmentalists. He cared about the environment, went out into, I think it was along the northern coast. I mean, not northern coast, but the west coast, went up north, got some land, built a house, put out all of his solar panels, and he noticed that he was not getting the energy that it was supposed to be getting. And then that led him in one thing after another into research, and he found out about the dimming projects and weather manipulation that he never expected. And now, sadly, they have put so many chemicals in our ground from the effect that when it rains, these chemicals come down, get on our animals, our plants, in our soil, that these people have truly damaged our environment. And, like you say, we can't play God, but Dr. Furey, I don't think the people doing all of this even believe in God.
Well, I think at a fundamental level, I have hope that people may be absent from God, but I think that their lives they're filled with sadness or emptiness. And I think when we see these groundswells of Christian movements, particularly on our college campuses, that people, and particularly young men, are really reaching out for something that has meaning. And I think sadly, I think we need to get our young women on board. The men, and I'm grateful that the young men are leading the way as the masculine leader. I love seeing that. And I want women, the young women of this nation, to begin seeing that the priorities of the left or the priorities of the world, all right, are not the priorities of God. And that if you're seeking things in the world, you're not going to receive the happiness, the true happiness that you want as an individual and as a family.
And, depression is at an all-time high. And you're a psychiatrist. Do you want to talk about anything like that? Like what do parents do? What should they be looking for in their child? It starts young, or it could hit you when you're young in the middle school ages, and maybe even last a lifetime if you're not guided correctly to figure out what's going on and why you're thinking certain ways.
I think for every person it's a little different, but I think for parents in particular, it's taking the time to understand what influences your child. Was your child happy before they went to school? So what's happening in school, and what is the negativity that they could be being exposed to from teachers and from classmates? What is going on in terms of social media? What are their influences? How much time do they spend on social media? All right. And really, one of the things I recommend is turn the social media off. Don't buy your children a phone. Don't buy them an iPad. Don't give them access to the internet. And watch them bloom because they're not focused on a screen that's 12 inches in front of their face. They need to be outside. They need to be playing. They need to be interacting with people who are right there with them, not people on a screen. And even though there are positives, being connected with people family members who are not right in your area, but for the most part, you don't want to be communicating over screens because you've lost the importance of contact. Also looking at what is the food that you're eating and how are you eating? All right. Are you sitting down to family meals? Are you, working together? Are you playing together? Are you eating together as a family? Bringing those things back. All right. Because many people have lost them. Many parents today never grew up with those things. And so they have to really learn, how do I bring those things back? Is there a sense of God in their family? Is there a higher power? So many people think that the burden of solving the world's problems or their problems is solely upon their shoulders. And it's very disillusioning, so that there's no hope. There's so many bad things going on in the world. Why should I have any hope? And yet there's tremendous hope and there's tremendous happiness. And it's because happiness doesn't come from things of this world. Happiness comes from love, and that love ultimately comes from God.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed is, and it's a great concern of this generation. There's so much that is harmful out there. It's depressing. Even a grown-up can get depressed, but there are solutions to these things. I don't know. Let me see. I know you wanted to talk about farmers, and you said it's important what we eat, and we are finding that more and more. That's kind of why our friend Pamela and I, and your friend of Pamela's as well, who's a nurse, started this because I think we need to be aware of what we're putting into our bodies, and it has a lot to do with how we feel and how we think. Do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. And I think this is a great topic because Bernadette Pager, who is from Tennessee, will be speaking at our upcoming summit on, October 10th and 11th. It's in Purcellville, Virginia at Patrick Henry College. So if you want to be part of this summit, you can go to our website, VAMFA.org, and get tickets, where the last tickets are being sold right now. So go quickly. But Bernadette is from Stand for Health Freedom, and she's going to be specifically talking about our soil. And one of the things that's so critical is that the manufacturers of pesticides want indemnity. That means that they want to be able to spray products on our soil that enter the plants that are planted there and ultimately cause cancer in us. They want to have no liability for this forever. All right. Yeah. And so this is the same thing that occurred with the childhood vaccine schedule. So in 1986, they passed legislation that says pharmaceutical companies will not be held liable for the damages that vaccines cause. So now these same companies, and many of them based on China, all right, who are making these products, the pesticides that go onto our crops in our fields that are sprayed 1, 2, 3, 4 times a year, all right, that is going directly from the ground into these plants and making them toxic to us. And so this is why it's really important that across the nation, in every state, we stop this from happening. And we support farmers who are growing organically. And organically in the sense that they are not putting pesticides in there on the land, and they're also doing what we call regenerative farming. So they want to bring the land back to its original purpose and quality. So the quality of our soils has diminished over the decades. And I grew up in Iowa, and I remember how thick and black the soil was when I was a child. And I don't see that soil. All right. We need to bring that back. And if we begin not killing and destroying the nutrients in the soil, we will have nourishing food and we will not have the poisons in our own body.
Those poisons can actually affect the way we think.
Absolutely.
Too. That I believe that's a lot of that is the depression that we're seeing. The leaky gut is causing that, just anxiety, because the pesticides that are on there now, the glyphosate, it causes leaky gut. I was listening to a podcast, the Cultural Apothecary, and there was a person on there who was explaining what glyphosate is as a byproduct of Agent Orange and the way it kills insects to stay off of the plants is it explodes their stomachs. Well, it gets on the plants and we eat it. So what do you think that does to us?
And it's neurotoxic. Okay. So it's not only the gut, but every aspect of our body is affected by this. And so the neurotoxicity of these chemicals has a real effect on us. And, Bill Gates's answer is we're just going to geoengineer food. But what he doesn't tell you about that geoengineered food is it has all of these products, a list of products that are not occurring naturally. All right. They can't be identified. So do you want to eat something that has chemicals in it that can't be identified? I choose no on that one.
Yeah, me too. I just want to go back to basics. So on these regenerative farms, how are they getting the soil back to what it should be with all the toxins that keep falling from the sky?
I think it's a process. I'm not a regenerative farmer, so you're going to have one on.
Yes.
It is a process, and they work the land, they get animals on the land. So it is a process that they can do it, and they can just stopping the whole process of adding things and allowing things to return to normal. The grasses that normally would grow there and allowing them to flourish is the start.
Okay. Well, I know that's not your area of expertise. You have lots of them, but but you're going to have somebody talking about that at the conference.
Correct.
This week. Okay. Yes. And I would encourage if you are in the area and can get over to Percival, that's Northern Virginia, it would be a great conference for you to go to because you even have Alex Newman. I assume he's going to be talking about the state of education.
Absolutely. And the WHO and the UN. So he's going to hit it all.
Wow. Lots to go over.
So we'll have two constitutional lawyers there. So William Olson and Ivan Ranklin. Garrett O'Boyle, who was a whistleblower for the FBI. Steve Crawling is going to talk about vaccines. Jim Erdman and Marcus Thornton are from Feds for Freedom and stood up to the government mandate and said, and sued the federal government. They led the movement to sue the federal government for an unconstitutional mandate about the COVID-19 shots. Matt Strickland is a private businessman, former military, who also stood up at the state level and said, he's a business owner who said, no, your regulations don't make sense. I'm not closing my restaurant. Dr. Irene Mavrakakis is going to have a wonderful talk about the nature of life, the nature of death, and in particular, the move to change the definitions of brain death and how that affects the medical establishment's move to want to organ harvest. And so being very cautious about anything that you sign in terms of organ harvesting or donating of your organs, because you don't know what the medical establishment is really doing behind the scenes. Christine Dolan is an investigative journalist who has worked on human trafficking for over 20 years and has now applied that expertise to medical trafficking. And that's essentially what we saw in COVID-19 is the trafficking of medical the medical model and mandating of things for a profit for the pharmaceutical companies and other businesses, but not for the people. And I also spoke about Bernadette Pager, who's going to talk about farming and the pesticide movement. And then I'm going to be able to speak on gender dysphoria.
Would you like to talk a little bit about that problem right now? We have about 10 minutes, 9 minutes.
All right. So what we have seen, and most people look to the last 5 years, but this movement of gender dysphoria has actually been going on for over 45 years. Yeah. All right. It's actually, the movement is over 100 years old. Mm-hmm. All right. But it really got a stronghold in the United States in 1980. All right. When prior to this, disorders of sexual pedophilia, necrophilia, other things were called sexual deviant behaviors. And that's exactly what they were. And that's an important word, because it was deviant both in terms of culture, but in terms of morality and common law. That as a people, we understood that there are some things that were simply wrong and you shouldn't do them. All right. So it was like a red flag to everyone. This is something that you do not want to participate in. In 1980, they changed that language to psychosexual disorders. All right. So this is just a disorder, you know, different people have it, and we're going to accept it and formulate potential treatments for it. However, by 1987 was the first time that the diagnostic manual for psychiatry, so Diagnostic and Statistical Manual in Psychiatry, used the term gender assigned at birth.
Really? In 1987?
Yes. And so we don't assign gender or sex at birth. We are born girl, boy, male, female, XX, XY. This entire concept was introduced. And what it did was that it gave legitimacy to something that has no scientific basis. And this was an attempt, and it was a successful attempt, to get funding and money. All right. So if you have a diagnosis, you can now apply to the NIH or pharmaceutical companies, and you can get grants and monies for research. All right. So this process, and every step of the way, the psychiatric community has been corrupted and has gone down this road of legitimizing something that has no scientific basis. And so since 1980, where they call, you know, gender identity disorder or transsexualism rare and occurring in houses or in children who had experienced significant family dysfunction or childhood abuse. Mm-hmm. So if we just consider rare at 1 in 100,000 or 1 in a million, okay? The percent increase is 1,349,000% increase in 45 years. Therefore, there is nothing scientific about this. And further, the people on the board in 1980, there were 15 people. One of them was John Money, who was from Johns Hopkins. The year before, the gender identity clinic at Hopkins was closed. It was closed because they had no evidence of surgical procedures or medication sterilization or attempting to use medications to sterilize or change gender was helpful. There was no evidence. However, as many of us know, when you fail at one job, sometimes you get elevated. And that's exactly what happened. And he was on this committee And it was a weighted committee in 1980 that began the shift. So 15 people overturned the field of psychiatry and literally put children, the lives of children, they sacrificed the lives of the children for an ideology that has no scientific basis. And that is the complete corruption of this field. And so you have to begin to think, if they have done this with psychosexual disorders, all right, just using their terminology,
Right.
what else have they done this with? All right. So I'm saying this as a psychiatrist, and I believe that people have psychiatric illness. I believe that people need to receive treatment. I believe even that medicines have helped people. But I also know that we have to have a very holistic and broad way that we look at people, and we cannot minimize them simply to a prescription. And so often what has happened, particularly in psychiatry, is the psychiatrist is looked at solely as the prescriber. And this was very dangerous when it occurs, and it remains even more dangerous today. Yeah. And in terms of gender dysphoria, they can now go in and diagnose someone with gender dysphoria in a 30-minute appointment. You cannot begin to even scratch the surface of all the reasons that a child may present with gender dysphoria in a 30-minute appointment.
No.
And this is what's really sad. And it puts them on a track that is destroying their lives. We are chemically and surgically castrating our children. And further, we are permanently damaging their bodies. This whole concept that these drugs are reversible is a complete lie. And there's the direct relationship between our hormones and brain development. That begins in utero, and it continues throughout the lifespan. And it is accelerated in adolescence. And one of the beauties of adolescence is not just the physical growth of the body, but the growth of the brain. And in particular, the frontal lobe and their ability to gain executive function. And what happens when you put them on hormone suppressing drugs is you stop that brain development. This is a tragedy.
Yeah, it is.
I hope that more and more people reach out and begin suing doctors one after another who have promoted this treatment without evidence that it is going to help the child. They're not looking at the fundamental problems, the fundamental issues that are causing this distress. They are further, and because there is so much overprescription of psychiatric meds, we must look at the impact of psychiatric meds on sexual development, and that many children may be suffering from the sexual side effects of those meds, and that's contributing to their gender dysphoria.
Wow. Well, I know that your message is not popular with people who want to believe in the lies. The same thing with the sexual diversity issue, the homosexuality. That's just always so difficult to deal with. But there's something deeper going on psychologically with a person. And if you really care about your neighbor or your loved one, sometimes telling them the truth that no, what you're being told is not true, but sit down in love and just go back into their life. And one thing I did study when I was doing deep research in the homosexual issues is that I learned that at the age of 10, between 10 and 11, I would say 9 and 11 is the span because everybody's different. Our frontal lobes are really growing. And if we're in a natural course of life and just healthy relationships, it's wonderful. We explore and learn and absorb like a sponge, but say that you're being abused and you're not living that full life that God intended, then there's going to be some serious issues down the road. If something, and usually you find out that something happened in that time frame with an individual, and it's sad, and they're worth exploring, sitting down and taking time to figure out and helping them through that hurt and that pain.
Absolutely. When we look at statistics, it's approximately 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys is sexually abused in some manner prior to the age of 18. And if there's ongoing trauma, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be sexual trauma, what that does is it pulls the child out of the frontal lobes, all right, into what we would call the limbic system, so fight or flight. So they're concentrated on survival, not thinking. It's reacting. And one of the key things is that we have to get children and even adults back into their frontal lobes so that they can reason. And so if you're looking at, talking to a child about this, how can they make informed consent to a procedure that they don't fully understand? They don't fully understand the long-term consequences. And if there's any cognitive delay, remember that a sense of permanency or life and death develops around the age of 8. Okay. So you understand that death is permanent. All right. But if you have cognitive delay, that may be 9, 10, 11. If you layer on that trauma, that can be even older. So you have children who are being coached, in my mind, down a road where they don't understand that this will cause a permanent change in their life. Because like other things, they think, well, if it doesn't fit in 6 months, I'll change back to something else.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
It's not going to happen. Wow. There's so much to talk about. We didn't even get to digital ID, and our time is up. But anyway, let me put this flyer up one more time. If you could tell people one more time how to get tickets, the ones that are left. I know that your events do sell out.
They do. So it's VAMFA.org or Google Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance and click on the icons on the screen, and you'll be able to purchase tickets. You can purchase tickets for Friday or Saturday or both. And if you are a student, high school or college student, you can be admitted for free. All right. We have a generous sponsor who's going to cover the cost for all of our students. So we're really looking forward to having students, particularly college students, attend this event. And if you are interested in working in government or in medicine, bring your CV because this is an opportunity for you to look for possible internships during your summer. So this is a great opportunity to speak with people who are right there in the State Department, who are working in government offices, and you're going to be able to interact with them firsthand.
Wow. Wow, there's so much, and it's a win-win for everybody. So Dr. Furey, first, thank you just for listening to the Spirit of God and just pushing through. You've been through a lot. You've been criticized. You've been stolen from, anyhow, I just thank you so much. And I thank God for you and for your spirit and your tenacity. That's what I think I feel that resonates with me the most is you keep going. So thank you. It's not easy being a warrior.
And I'm happy to do it, and I will continue to do it.
Yes. And we're so much better off for you in this world. I hope that you can come back, in maybe down the line, and we can talk about the digital ID and maybe guide some people, because there's a lot of confusion. People don't realize they can opt out.
Yes, they can.
Yeah.
Just say no.
Yeah, exactly. And be bold about it. Anyway, thank you. And I'll be praying for the event. I know it's going to be fantastic.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on.
Yes, ma'am.